Okay, ladies and gentlemen, as we continue with section 5.3, solving equations, let's look at this next equation. 7m times the quantity 3n plus 1 equals 0. If two factors are multiplied together to give me the answer 0, that means that either the first factor is 0, so 7m equals 0, or the second factor is 0. So that's how we set up the case. In this first case, when we divide by 7, 0 divided by 7 gives me the answer m equals 0. Here, we subtract 1 from both sides and divide by 3, giving me the answer n equals negative 1/3. All right, two factors are multiplied together to give me the answer 0. The only way that can happen is if the first factor is 0 or the second factor is 0. If the first factor is 0 and we solve that case by adding 5 and dividing by 3, we get the answer 5/3. If the second factor is equal to 0, we subtract 11 from both sides and we divide by 7, giving me the answer x equals negative 11/7. All right, next equation. 7x squared minus x equals 0. Now, what I want you to notice, the two equations above that we worked, one side said 0, and the other side was already factored. And what I mean by factored is it was written as a product. So what we're going to do in this equation, before we can go to the setting up the cases step and actually solving, is we have to factor this expression. And we do that by taking out the greatest common factor of x. So we have x times the quantity 7x minus 1 is 0. And now we can set up our two cases. If two things multiplied together give me 0, then either the first factor is 0 or the second. In the first case we get 0, and in the second case, if 7x minus 1 is 0, we add 1 to both sides and divide by 7. Okay. 15x squared equals 5x. The problem with this equation is that we do not have a 0 on one side. So the first thing I'm going to do is take the 5x and move it over to the other side, or another way to say it, subtract 5x from both sides of the equation. So we establish this expression equals 0. That 0 is very important. Once we have the equals 0, we can now factor. We factor by pulling out the GCF, which is 5x, leaving us with 3x minus 1 in parentheses. We set up our two cases. Either 5x equals 0 or 3x minus 1 is 0. In this first case, when we divide by 5, we get the answer 0. And in the second case, we add 1 to both sides and we divide by 3. So we have two answers to this equation, namely 0 and 1/3. A key that I want you to start noticing, the degree of an equation, notice this is degree 2 and this is also degree 2. Those are both called quadratic equations. In general, when you have an equation of degree 2, there are two answers. Sometimes there are actually fewer. But in general, the degree of an equation will tell you how many answers you're expecting when you solve that equation. And again, one point to note, especially in higher level math, sometimes you get less answers than the degree, but you're never going to get more.